I'm live. Hopefully it will stay live for more than about 3 or 4 minutes. Boosted Lifestyles in the house. Mr. 8 Turbo. I watched a couple of videos. You doing burnouts in that thing. That's awesome. I want to see some dyno results. I want to see how that thing, I want to see what numbers it puts down. I'm wondering when after looking at how you routed all the lines from the turbos to the intercooler, I'm wondering why you don't just group all those together and run them into one line and then have a one in and one out, make the intercooler at least simpler. I mean, I like that it's more complex because that makes it more awesome. But dude, you got to try to make your life a little easier, man. So we are live at 7 o'clock. I hope everybody's having a good time. I just went and got my first vaccine shot today. So I don't know. That makes me immune or whatever. I'm just happy that hopefully all this stuff is going to go away and we can get back to normal. I put a video up today comparing the small block Chevy to the small block Dodge. And I even said in the video, I know that you guys are going to complain because one of them had more compression than the other, but they still did. That's part of the deal. Even when you tell them that they're going to do that, they do that anyway, which is kind of fun. But it's interesting, and I like doing some of those kinds of videos because everything, obviously, I mean, everybody wants to see, we got to make 1,000 horsepower with this. Yeah, that's a good idea, and it's lots of fun, and I like it. Don't get me wrong. I want to do 1,000 horsepower. Especially, I watched a video, and I get sidetracked here. I know there's so many like shiny objects that I want to look at and follow. I watched a video on the guys doing the turbo, the 4-liter Jeep engine and making big power. I think they made 820 or 830 or 850, whatever the number was, and that's really good. I like that. But now it makes me obviously, well, I got to make more than that with the 4200, and because I think that it's certainly possible given what all is there. So I'm excited about that. I think we need to step our game up on that one. But every motor doesn't need to be the 1,000 horsepower super boosted thing. Lots of guys, as a matter of fact, the vast majority of guys out there, the guys that have been reading my stuff for 25 years or whatever, they're guys that are, they're like most of us. Most guys, I wouldn't be able to afford the stuff that I do unless people didn't help me out with the things I was doing. So most of the guys just want to put like they have a motor, whatever it is, put a mild cam in it, springs. A lot of guys will port their own heads, which, if nobody else is going to do it and you can do it yourself, get in there. I mean, you can't make them any worse, really, especially with some of these older cast iron things like the Dodge 360 stuff or those 882s on the small block Chevy, because they're not. And if you hurt one or break it or whatever, I mean, there's lots of them available, so it's not hard to find. So a mild cam, the guys port their own heads. We put bigger valves in them. They put 202 intake valves in them, 1.6 exhaust valves. And then a dual plane intake, which that's one area where I might spend a little money. Although on the Chevy, I don't know if there is for the Dodge, but for the Chevy, there's certainly inexpensive Chinese intake manifolds that work very well, dual plane intake manifolds. And you wouldn't see much of a difference between that and the expensive stuff, especially not at this power level. If you're trying to get the maximum amount of power, you might want to get a good one. But we use RPM air gaps on these. And we use Quadrajets and also Demons from way back in the day. But Holly obviously works well, a Brawler. Even something that you got from the wrecking yard would probably work, especially if you're a guy who doesn't mind rebuilding the carburetor, if you have to rebuild the carburetor. And then long tube headers, and away you go. Then you have something that, and I like showing these kinds of tests because it shows what the thing was stock. And in this case, we ran both of them with 2-barrel manifolds. So they were kind of the lowest bottom of the barrel kind of thing. They had stock exhaust manifolds, 2-barrel. They were both, the Chevy was a little bit more compression because we put a flat top piston in it, but the Dodge was definitely low compression and probably lower than I thought. I mean, I don't remember measuring how far down the piston was in the hole, but I'm sure if it's like any other Dodge, it's like 6 feet down in the hole. So the compression was probably, my estimate at 8.4 to 1 might have been a little enthusiastic. I might have overstated it a little bit on the Dodge because they're typically way down in the hole. The Slant 6 is way down in the hole. All the 440s I've seen have been way down, and the 318 to 360 stuff, that's like the apples and oranges. So it probably was even lower compression. So it was and the point to all of that was that, hey, look, we did these things and the mods were similar. And we came out with, guess what? We came out with similar power numbers. Guys that want to argue about one being better than the other, that's not what this channel is. This channel is about all of them need to make more power. And I'm not going to tell you that I'm an LS guy and that LSs are better than everything, or that I'm a 4200 guy or a rotary guy or any of those things. I guess I can't really say rotary guy until I actually run a rotary on the engine dyno, but I've done lots of stuff on the chassis dyno. My funnest thing with the rotary was when we did we actually did a fan test. We did a mechanical fan test on the rotary because it had like a clutch fan on it, but I think the clutch went out. And so we put one of those flex fans on it. And not only did it sound like an airplane taking off, it was terrible, but it also cost us quite a bit of power with that like, you know, fixed flex fan on it. And so it was not a good match for that rotary motor. But I do like doing the exhaust on those and all of that stuff, because man, an unmuffled rotary is really, really loud. That's why you put turbos on them, to quiet down the rotary. But if you haven't taken a look, make sure you take a look at the video that's up, and it's the Dodge versus the Chevy. And the Ford guys, I even said in the video, hey, Ford guys, I'm sorry I didn't include a Ford in here, because I don't remember doing the a 351 that would have been this kind of mild thing. I would probably choose, if I was doing the 351, and I may do this with the Magnum stuff and the later Vortec headed Chevy, we would do probably a GT40 headed 351, because the factory heads are not that good. If I would have done it for this instance, we probably would have just used the E7TE heads on it, because that's what would have been there. We could have ported those, and you can get, you know, a bit more power out of them. And so that would have been a good contrast to the 882s and the J heads, I think, that were on the 360. So when we step up to the Magnums, we can go to the unfortunately for the Ford guys, when we step up to the Magnum motor, if we do a 360 Magnum and do a 350 Vortec motor, there really isn't a 351 that can like match what those guys did with those combinations, unfortunately, because the Ford was always saddled with not a very good head. So we'll have to look at maybe doing a GT40 head on that or something, just to, you know, make it a little more even. So let's see, what do you guys got going on tonight? Yeah, Tim, the 90 would be I think a low estimate on a lot of these. I know that the Slant 6 was probably like 150 or 160 down, and a lot of these, the 440s that we've looked at, are just way down in the hole. It's just ridiculous. So let's go back here, and I'll see what guys going on. I like the apples and the oranges. I put the apples in the video too. I hope people like that. It's not apples to apples. That's their favorite thing. I noticed a simpleton in the chat. That's got to be pointing at me, obviously. I know, James, that intro music, after I play it for when I'm doing the videos and I'm editing, I play that, and then it's that song. It's like It's a Small World when you go to Disneyland. Then that plays in your head when you're going to sleep and stuff. But, you know, it does make me want to dance. So I know. Let's hope the internet holds up. And actually, last night was not an internet problem. It was actually a problem with my laptop, because I was using the laptop instead of this computer, because our internet connection is so bad here that I thought maybe the laptop would be a little bit better. But the laptop just, like, I thought that the laptop died, actually. I thought it was going to get the blue screen of death, but it came back. But it just like said, hey, I'm done. I'm out. And just stopped. And I'm like, what happened? Then it came back on, but obviously I wasn't there anymore, and you guys weren't there anymore. And then I had trouble, because then it kept showing that the live feed was still on, and then I couldn't figure out how to turn it off. So, you know, it's a little bit of excitement for the night. Okay, just a warning to anyone shopping for cheap turbos: be aware that the shipping isn't guaranteed, and I'm working with a customer service to figure out what happened. What cheap turbos are you talking? Oh, cheap, is that the name of it? Cheap turbos? John, an ad appeared. You missed the beginning. The beginning, we were talking about today anyway, we were talking about the 350 versus the 360, the Chevy versus the Dodge. Mike's here. What's up? James, I'm a Chevy man, seen a junkyard twin turbo 360 with Grand National turbos on it, go low tens. Yeah, back in the day, they're probably giving those Grand National turbos away. Now probably everybody wants them back so they can restore their Grand National. A blow-through Q-jet. Now, I've never seen that. Boost reference fire extinguisher with water in it. Nice. That's definitely OG water injection there. James, turbocharging definitely works. I mean, there's no doubt about it. Julius is in the house. Mike's here, who retracted his message. Can you explain spark plug heat ranges and the general effects on the engine? We use a colder plug just because we think that it helps stop detonation. And the only reason that I do it is because I was told that. I honestly haven't seen a direct test where I saw one ignite or one have a different detonation threshold than others. I'm told by people who have done tuning that if you have too hot of a plug in there, that it will cause detonation. I just haven't seen it in real life, and I'd like to. The more you know, the more that you don't know. That's what happens. $200, Sinister. That's a good deal. That's a good one to do a project on. Mike, I agree. And a couple of guys pointed that out in the comments. Mike said that the Dodge has an obvious advantage over the small block Chevy because it can take a bigger stroke. You can put a 4-inch stroke in a Dodge 360 and make it a 400-inch motor, which is difficult to do on a small block Chevy block without having interference with the rods and the camshaft and stuff. Caleb wants to know if you're building an engine for maximum torque, what things would you do different versus maximum horsepower? Well, if you take a look at the video where we did the torque, we did the different cams to talk about torque, you need to be specific about where you want the torque. That's the thing. You have to tell me what kind of torque curve you want. Because building maximum torque might be the same as building maximum horsepower. A lot of times when we make a really big horsepower number, we also make a really big torque number. It's just that we do it at a slightly higher RPM. All of them are shifted up, and we usually trade off low speed torque, but we have more peak torque. So you got to be specific about which one of those things that you want and where you want that torque to be. Matt, I love that you discriminately test all kids of engines. So two things, kinds, not kids, obviously. And the word you're looking for might be indiscriminately. Really pleased with the LA doing just exactly this in my B300. She only has 6 3/4 cylinders. Uh-oh, it needs more than that. The Dodge motor, and I get this all the time from guys that are Dodge guys. Usually I get this more with the 318, that the 318 is like somehow the best motor ever made, that it's a giant killer and that it's like overlooked and it's underappreciated. It's all these things, and it's not. It's, if you take a look at every year that the 318 was produced and you look at how much power it was rated at, there's a reason that it was never a performance motor, and it still isn't. That's not to say with a 318-inch motor, if you put decent heads on it and a camshaft and you put compression and a 4-barrel and headers and stuff, that it's not going to do what every other 318-inch motor does. It does the same thing. There's nothing that makes it magic about it being a Dodge 318. If we built a 318 small block Chevy or a 318 Ford with those kind of heads and that camshaft and that induction system, it would do the same thing. There's nothing about a 318 Dodge or a 360 Dodge or a 340 Dodge that makes it better. A lot of guys were bringing up interesting stuff that I thought was, I never even thought about this because maybe because it doesn't make a great deal of difference. And they were bringing up, yeah, but the the Dodge has bigger lifters, so it can take more camshaft, which is a definite plus. Not for what we were running, not for these 206, 212 kind of cams that we were running. That makes no difference. And also a lot of them brought up like rod length and rod ratio. They're talking about how bad the small block Chevy rod ratio is. And I'm like, man, you guys just don't get it. On a sub 400 horsepower motor making peak power at 5,200 RPM, none of that is relevant. It doesn't make any difference at all. John's in the house. Fascist, don't worry about yesterday. We had as much fun without you. Oh, that says a lot. I'm not feeling the love, man. Sister, small but Chevys are super cheap now that everything is LS. I like my LS Cam Silverado, but also, and that's the thing. We know that an LS, if you get an LS and you go grab one from the wrecking yard, they're cheap. But a lot of guys have small block Chevys in their thing already. So swapping in a small block, an LS from a small block Chevy for a lot of guys is much more difficult, especially if they're trying to go fuel injection. It's much more difficult than just upgrading the small block that they have. Although in a lot of cases, especially if guys have like these 882 headed things or these swirl headed things, you know, going to the wrecking yard and getting at least a long block Vortec headed small block is really a good way to go. And put a camshaft in it, put an intake manifold on it, and it's, you know, you can get really close, I think, to 400 horsepower with that kind of combination. You might have to do a little bit of work to the heads to get the right valve spring in there, but it's certainly possible. And it's pretty easy. Do a spark plug test. We at Westech, we've tested a number of spark plugs, a variety of different kinds. I've tested different gaps. We have tested, and that's one of the things. Somebody sent me a message today saying that they set their plug gap at 65 thousandths. So I'm like, whoa, hang on a second. Well, why would you put your plug gap at 65 thousandths? Why would you even put it at 45 thousandths? That's another thing that I hear a lot of guys talk about. Yeah, you got to have a wide plug gap because that gets all that spark energy out there and it improves the situation. And I just have never found that. I've never found plug gap to change the power other than when you have too much plug gap and you have insufficient spark energy and it doesn't want to jump the gap and you have misfire, then it will definitely lose power. E3s, no, they're not going to make power. Again, in all of the kinds that we've tested split fires and just all kinds of crazy V-shaped and U-shaped and Y-shaped and side gapped and all these things. And if the plug fires, there's a really good chance that they're all going to make the same power. When they don't fire is usually the problem. The material that the plug is made out of can help the spark energy, like it can help it jump the spark. But the material that it's made out of is more for longevity usually, and not because it creates a magically hotter spark or anything like that. I have to be that guy. Why was a 351 Windsor not in competition? Nick, like I said, I didn't have one that was run at those kinds of with those kind of mods. I don't remember doing any stock ported Ford heads. I have to go back and look, but I don't remember doing any ported E7TE heads. I remember doing some hand ported aluminum GT40 heads, but not any of the stock ones to use as kind of a comparison with that 351. Yeah, having enough fuel pump is important. Having enough fuel and having big injectors helps the fuel pump because you don't have to run as much pressure. There's lots of cool things. But the Dodge has that stupid 59-degree lifter angle. It does have a different lifter angle, that's for sure. Got my claws on a built 354 bolt, forged crank, cam, and a nice pair of heads of a mid-rise center for it, set it for dual carbs. Okay. If you're looking for dual quad carbs, I have some. I've got some Elbrocks. What are they? I think that they're 1804s. So if you need some, and I also have, as luck would have it, I have a pair of Holley 600s, and they're 4160 carburetors. So those are also set up for a dual quad. And I think with the Holleys, I might even have the plates to add to the 4160 to kind of make it into a 4150 where you can have adjustable jets in the back. Otherwise, it's kind of fixed. So if you're interested in that, let me know. I'll put my email down here. And I ran the I think I put caps. My thing isn't caps. Dang caps locks. AOL.com. Yeah, there we go. Okay, there's the email address. And I think we ran the 600s, I think, way back on the dual quad Holly when I was doing the intake test for the LS stuff. And these carburetors were run on a dual quad Hemi manifold, which I also have a Hemi camshaft, a late model Gen 3 Hemi camshaft. If anybody's interested in that, it's an Extreme Energy 268 comp, one of the original 3 that they used to make. It's the stage 2. It's the middle of the 2 camshafts. So if you're interested in that, let me know. How well would a Magnum V8 perform with an LS style intake? I think that the Magnum intake already is a pretty good intake manifold. That beer keg, I think, is a fairly long runner deal. I think the thing that's limiting it is the throttle body on top of it, but I'll have to take a look at that and see. And one of the intake manifold that's really good is actually the Magnum intake on the late model on the early Gen 3 Hemi. That Magnum intake is really good. So is the truck one. They both make more power through most of the RPM range than the SRT8 aluminum manifold does. But I like the composite Magnum one, and that's the one that's in the Magnum, like the wagon version. I want to build a Dodge 360 for towing a Dodge Dakota. There you go. Jonathan, I don't have any. I've never tested a set of Rhodes lifters. I would like to. I think that would be interesting. I can't remember ever running those. I know I'll get roasted. Dan, you're in the right place, man. You're among friends. It auto-corrected indiscriminately. I like that. The 318 just never made enough power to hurt itself. And like I said, like Uncle Tony loves the 318. Dulcich obviously loves the 318, and that's great. It's just that it's not magic compared to other stuff. In fact, a lot of those guys will argue that the 318 is even better than the 360, which I just don't know how you make a case for that. A later Dodge Diplomat cop car with a turbo 360 would be interesting. Yep. The one that I want to test is I think it's a B58 360, and I actually want to compare that to one of the 340 high compression motors, because I'm thinking that 360 is going to be really close in power to the 340. Steven, 53LM7 with a flat top pistons, BTR stage 2 truck cam, Torque Storm supercharger with 862. Will this go boom? No, you won't. It'll be fine. The Torque Storm supercharger is good for 700 or a little more than that if you really spin it up, but it will be fine on that 5.3. Really liking the channel. Keep it up. I definitely will. Thanks for joining us. Disadvantages include a way funky head assortment to try to get the big crank to work. Lots of odd choices, especially if you want the old direct connection stuff. Edelbrock seems to be the best choice. Mike, I did an interesting test, and I did it on this motor that's in the video that I posted today. And we compared these mildly ported stock heads to a set of aluminum Edelbrock heads, and they made almost identical power. And I talked to Dulcich about this, and he said, yeah, he said, actually, unless you do a little bit of work on the Edelbrock heads, they're not a big jump up in power on the 360 compared to a decent stock head, to like a J head or an X head. So just no going in. And he's done, when Dulcich has done porting on these, he's unearthed a lot of power, especially if you have it on a good combination. And obviously, if you do it on a 318, it's not going to pick up that much power because there's just not enough motor to take advantage of what would be there. But I've seen his porting stuff yield lots and lots of power. A 2.8-liter Chevy V6. Let's see. Any advice for a carb 85 2.8 and an S10 Blazer cam and EFI setup? Yeah, you could do that, or you could do a blow through carbureted turbo on that fairly easily. I've never run a 318 poly. I know that Westech has run a couple of them there, and I don't remember whose they were, but I've never put one together, and I've never run one. I keep going back, Bill. I keep going back to your small twin GT35s versus the larger single turbo. Looking at doing a 6.0 with a sloppy stage 2 and E85. Just not sure if the two GT40s are large enough, or a larger single would work better. Looking for 800 horsepower. Well, that's why we did the test, so you could see. I think that on because I did the twin setup and I did the remote twin setup, so the twin setup is obviously better, and then the GT45s are enough to support way over 800 horsepower. And so would if you want to have the thing be more responsive and you're not worried about going, past 1,000 horsepower, then look at the VS Racing, the 7875, or like the BorgWarner S475 that we had, but do a T4 instead of a T6. The 383 Mopar versus the 383 Chevy, and the 383 Mopar is, according to Steve Dulcich, the best engine ever made. The thing that is funny about the Mopar stuff, excuse me, especially the bigger stuff like the 440, is that they have basically small block sized heads on them. If you look at the flow rates of a 440 head versus any other, like compared to a Recport big block head, it's not even close. I mean, a 440 head flows more like a decent small block head than it does like a decent big block head. And that's kind of what holds back the 440s, unless you put aftermarket stuff on them. On a 383, it's obviously less of a restriction because it's a smaller motor, but still, a lot more head would help. Coilover versus distributor test. I'd like to know what kind of motor, Andy. I don't know what motor we would test that on. Honestly, since we've made like 4-digit power levels and mid 4-digit power levels with distributors and ignition amplifiers, like on big block Chevys and stuff, I don't know where the coil on plug stuff would come into play. I don't know at an RPM thing, yeah, because of rise time on the coil, but I don't know where we would see a gain there. What kind of spark plug should I run on my Mazda B2300 2.3 liter inline 4? I would run stock ones, and I would just take some gap out of them, or run one heat range colder maybe, and I don't think that's going to hurt anything. I'm swapping my small block Chevy for an LS in my Chevelle, mainly because I have a 308, and if I'm going to swap, might as well bring it into the new Century. Is the 308 your gear? How about a coilover versus distributor test? Andy, I got your question. I'll answer your question, man. But thank you. E3s, yeah, it would not be my choice. I want the best spark plugs I can buy. You're putting way too much stock in what a spark plug does and what it can do. You can buy plugs that are $2 and they're going to do what a $25 set of iridium plugs are going to do. Yeah, the precious metal materials, whether it's platinum or iridium, from a asteroid, all of that stuff is just more designed for longevity. Yeah, and if you could get copper plugs, they won't last as long, but they work really good, and they're only a couple of bucks. I've never tested a plasma ignition on anything. What is the best source for BR7EF? You should just look online. 416 Desert Race engine has a cam motion, 228, 220, 244, 621, 604, 113 plus 3, dynos at 600 horsepower, 566. 416. Yeah, that's good. That's a pretty small cam for that kind of power. Now, I wonder what intake manifold that has on it. I've never had a problem with NGKs either. David, a 238 cam versus a 228 cam might not. Take a look at the video that I have up where I ran a 224, 227, and a 231 cam all on a 6.2 liter on LS3. And we basically saw no change in the power except at the top. So on a 416, you might see that going from a 228 to a 238 cam, and they're both on a 113. You might see that. You might only see gains. And if this is a desert race engine, you're not at 2,000 RPM anyway. If you did lose a little at 2,000 RPM, it wouldn't make any difference. Yes, Mike, the Dodge has a bigger lifter bore, but like I was saying, for a cam that's a 425 or 430 and 206 degrees of duration, that's really not a concern. Yes, a lot of guys modified the beer kegs to shorten the runners because that will help make power at the top and then trade power down low. Kevin, you must be new to the channel. Have you ever built or messed around with a Cadillac 500? Take a look at the playlist that says Cadillac 500, and you'll see all the tests that I did out with Courtney out at CAD Company. We ran all kinds of stuff. And yeah, I've blown them up before. Julius, Richard, I have an old set of 4VC heads from a Boss 260. They would need freshing. Do you want them to put on your 4.6 after the 2V tests? I don't have a 4.6 anymore. All of my modular stuff is gone now. Yeah, crush factor back in the day at Rhodes lifters. If you read any Carcraft or Hot Rod or any of the magazines, all of them had Rhodes lifters. And they all had either Cliffords or Ungo boxes, and they had block punks in them. And they had, if you go back far enough, they would have 8-tracks. But that's all the stuff I remember. Race lifters can make 20 horsepower. That's interesting. The 3900, the new 3900 should be a lot better than that 3800. I'm hoping that would have much better heads on it, Tim. If you know anything about the flow rate of the heads, they've got to be better. E58, yeah, and also in other applications, Chris, too. I think that a buddy of mine had a Dodge Aspen that had that 360 in it. Let's get my thing to focus here. Come on, come on! Don't make me shake you, choke you to death. Yeah, so that was it was a good motor, and I think that the torque of that is going to be a lot better than that 340. But it would be interesting to see. I want to set up my 4.8 Chevy LS. What would be the best setup? There's lots of 4.8 tests up on here. Just tell me how much power you want to make, and I can tell you what. There's lots of NA tests on the 4.8. There's lots of look at the videos on the channel. They go 400, 500, 600, 700, 800 horsepower kind of power recipes, and you can figure out what you want to do there. I haven't run Granatelli's plug wires that I can remember. These Concams race roller lifters use only a quarter of a turn preload. The short travel lifters will be very little preload on them. They might be only 10 or 15 thousandths. I would like to see a big block Chrysler with aftermarket camshaft and cylinder head test, also with decent compression. If you take a look at the guys at Engine Masters just did a comparison where they ran a 440 and a 426 Hemi with the same kind of combinations of camshaft and compression and stuff, and to show what they did, and it was pretty interesting. Abel, you got to tell us what you want to do with it. Let's see. Wash, how'd we get your attention? Nobody's going to build anything that other than an LS motor. That's not true. Take a look at this channel. .413 max wedge is the best Mopar. I would like to have seen the modified 360 back on the, I'm sure you're going to say dyno, but I actually put that motor back in the van and we drove it around. Not in the configuration, not in the last configuration that we showed. I take that back. I think we did run it that way. I ran it with headers. It had the 4-barrel on it. I think it might have had a thermal quad on it though, and not the not that quadrojet. Can't remember now. I'll have to look and see. But if you guys notice, and I'm surprised nobody mentioned this, that if you guys watch the video, one of the things that I mentioned there, I put a little Easter egg in there, you know, because I'm all about the Marvel universe. One of the things we did with the van is I ran it on the chassis dyno before we put it. I took it out and put it on the engine dyno because we just took it out and put it on with the stock exhaust manifolds and all that stuff. I even ran it with a stock exhaust, and it made like 157 horsepower on the chassis dyno, and then it made 231 at the flywheel. So you guys can start doing some math and figure out what the losses are there. So let's get down to the bottom here and see where we are. Greg's here from Vermont. Yeah, James, let me know what that modified 6-liter does. 799 heads, that's a good combination for a 6-liter. Would you agree that a copper core plug would be a better option than an iridium plug on a turbo 351 Windsor? I don't know why. I know a lot of guys have had bad luck with iridium plugs, but I haven't. I've run Denso iridiums mostly because they were given to us. But I've run those on a lot of applications, and we run really cold plugs. We run a 9 or a 10, and I've driven those on the street in my Civic, and it was a B series, like a sub 2-liter turbo powered Civic that I took to Bonneville, and it worked great. They work great under boost. They work great under sustained boost. We ran as much as 29 pounds on that motor on the engine dyno, and then we only ran it at about 17 pounds out on the salt, but it worked great. And the iridium plugs, we never had a misfire or anything. I'd have to check the trans temp in my truck. It's not very high. The cooling system seems to be working really well on that. Happy to help, David. Yeah, Scott, that's the one I was talking about earlier, is the Newcomer Racing's Jeep, that 4-liter that makes 800. So now that they've set the world record, maybe somebody needs to try to beat that. Although they look like they really did a really nice job, and their dyno's good, and the motor that they put together was nicely done, and they put a lot of work into it. Richard, do you have any old data on a 460 Ford stroker? I have lots of them. We've done lots of, I don't usually do 532s. We have some like right around 500-inch versions, and I have a lot of 557s. And I've run Kazi heads on those. We run airflow research heads on them. We've run the ones that made the most power so far were the trick flow, the CNC ported A460 heads. James, 48-60, want a cheap blower that's proven and works. Want a mean street car with awesome low-speed power and torque. Slap an LS on it and let it eat. Tune a few of their monsters. Yeah, the LSA blower look at what Matt did on his 4.8 with an LSA blower. It works good. It's got immediate boost response, and you can spin the tires and do all the fun things that you want. Yeah, Champion Copper Plus plugs $1.39 at Rock Auto. See, that's what you need right there. You need the $25 iridium plugs that last 100,000 miles because you don't want to change them on the new vehicles because it's so hard to get to. Oh, there's Bear Rose. You have the 2.3 SVO turbo motors, right? And are those in Idaho or somewhere? Is that where we were talking about? Ryan, I think it's a camper van. A camper van would still work, I think, with a 360, but a 440 would be better. The mileage is not going to be great with a 440, though. LS swap the camper van. Yeah, that's good. Is there any chance you could replicate the April Fool's joke from Holly, the moonshot, even if it's just done with spacers and no NO2? I think Freiberger, Julius, I think Freiberger did that. I think that him and Brule stacked spacers and ran a carburetor with these stacked spacers. I'll have to see how many they did, actually. I don't know that I've ever gone more than, I know that we put 2-inch stuff on it, and we may have stacked more than that on there, because I think I remember putting one of those on top of an adapter. So we have a little bit, but nothing like that. We could try it and see. I don't know how good the carb signal is going to be. What about a test between a 396 L78? The problem would be finding one of those. You'd almost have to create one of those to run that test. Fix it, Mike. Yes, the forged piston it needs more piston to wall clearance because it's going to expand at a different rate than a hypereutectic does, or that a cast piston does. Although there are different forged pistons, so you need to talk with the manufacturer and find out what alloy they used and determine the expansion rate. But anybody that sells their forged piston should be able to tell you what you should put the piston to wall clearance at. Can you build a turbo motor for torque? Every turbo motor makes torque, lots of it. Do I have a picture of the van? I'll try to take a look. It's an old tradesman van that somebody used for, it had the big supports on the side. What word am I looking for? It had big mounts on it for glass, like racks. That's simple word. It had racks on it for glass. And so everybody would get out of the way because they stuck out pretty far. So if I was coming over, all they saw were these like big spikes that were going to impale them. And we just left them on. But the coolest thing about it, the whole reason that I wanted the van, because it belonged to my crew chief when I was running U.S. touring car, Jason Wilson, and it was his van, and he bought it so that he could go snowboarding because they used to sleep in it. And I bought it just because it had a porch light. So it had an inside switch and a little light outside the opening doors. It kind of looked like like the vans that they use for ice cream trucks. But when you hit the switch, the little light outside would come on. So that's, we all have our reasons to get stuff. Donald, I would like to see, here's an apples to apples. Donald's going to talk about apples here. I would like to see on the 540 power out of video a more apples to apples comparison when you ran more nitrous and also a 1071 versus the ProCharger. Well, you're missing the point. It wasn't a comparison between one supercharger and another supercharger, or a supercharger and nitrous, or the turbo and nitrous, or anything else. It wasn't a comparison from the different kinds of forced induction. A 1071 can make more power, obviously, than the 671 we ran. But there are ProChargers that can make, umpteen amount of horsepower. So it's how much power you can make is all going to depend on which supercharger you choose. A 1071 is going to make more than that 671, and probably could make as much or more than, well, a 1071 certainly could make as much as that F1A94 ProCharger that we ran. But then what happens if we go to something bigger on the ProCharger? And also the ProCharger is going to be more efficient at the top, but it makes less boost down low. So the roots blower versus the centrifugal is going to be less about ultimate power than it is about a guy that wants a typical, a different power curve, because the positive displacement blower is going to have like immediate boost and it's going to have more low speed power than a centrifugal is. The turbos are ultimately going to make more power per pound of boost than either one of those because they don't have the parasitic loss associated with driving the blowers. But that will never happen because I don't have that 540 anymore. And the problem with an expansion valve on the intercooler is that you're having to, how are you going to pressurize the intercooler and then release the pressure? What happens on that front side when you're pressurizing that? You're not allowing any flow. Keith, I have a set of Edelbrock Gen 3 Hemi heads. I'm going to run them on, I have a 5.7, an early 5.7, I think it's an 06, and we will run them on that. I also have their intake manifold, and we're going to do a back-to-back comparison because I've got stock heads on it right now. Magnuson or Hamburger supercharger for my Jeep. I don't know much about either one of those on the Jeep motor. I'm not familiar with the 4-liter. I mean, I know what it is, and I've seen them, but I've not done any testing, nor have I really seen much other than the video that I looked at today on the turbocharged one. I'm building a Mopar 493 in RB with cast iron Indy heads. Have you played with Indy heads? And is there a cam that you like? I haven't done as much Mopar testing as I would want, and the only Mopar 440 base motor that I ran was the one that Dulcich let me, or Freiberger let me borrow. I'm building another one, and I have a set of, and I'm going to build a stroker version, and I have a set of trick flow heads that we're going to run on it, and a lot of their package that's going to go into it. So that should work really well, but I don't know about a cam yet. Julius, for everyone complaining about spark plugs, I have one word for Subaru. Apparently that must have hard spark plugs to change. Ira's been on vacation. It's good to have you back. Justin, for a torque cam and an LS, when you start tightening up the LSA, at what point do you need to start worrying about piston to valve? Well, the thing about what most people talk about torque cam, like if you look at the Brian Tooley torque cam, it's a perfect example. It's a 202 degree duration. I think it's a 111 LSA. We could tighten that up quite a bit because it has no duration in it. But if you're talking about a 231 duration at 50, and then you try to run 108 or 106 LSA, the pistons are definitely going to contact the valve. So because most of those torque cams have such low duration to begin with, there's a lot of room to tighten it up. But as you tighten it up, you're going to decrease idle quality. Sinister just changed his plugs in his RAM at 187,000 miles. The things that I missed, and hopefully you guys have seen these, if anybody remembers, they used to, J.C. Whitney used to sell these, and they were the little bags that had sand in them, and then they had a fitting for you to put air in them. Some of them were also electric that you could plug in, and you'd stick the spark plug in there, and then either the electric would spin the motor or the air pressure would spin the motor. And what they would do is basically just sandblast the spark plug. And then you take the spark plug out, and the spark plug would look like it was brand new. And that's how we bought new plugs. We had this cleaner, and that we would just clean the plugs and put them back in. And you know, we thought, hey, the plugs could last forever, right, if they're clean. Vincent has a 396 L78. And you're welcome to borrow it. I wouldn't want to hurt it, but it would be cool to run a 396. I would like to run that. If it's all original, especially, that would be cool. Yeah, James, I agree. The nitrous, the April Fool's nitrous thing. ...2006 Dodge Charger RT with 100,000 miles on it. My Hemi that I have has way more than that, and it runs just fine. I've never heard of the BND Automotive Quantum Blue fluids. What about the brake in the spacers? Gaskets, overhang, carb signal. I wouldn't be worried about the overhang and the spacers. If you made them all open spacers, obviously it's just going to be a big hole. If you started combining open and 4-hole spacers and all that, then that might be more problematic. I think it's going to be bad anyway. I just don't think if you stack this thing up 4 or 5 feet tall, put a carburetor on top of it, I don't know that the signal to the carburetor is going to be very good. The let's see, Richard, can you recall from what year the 1980s 364-bolt truck van motor heads that work pretty good versus the J heads? I thought that they continued the J head for quite a while. The other head is a 974, I think, on the 360. But most of those heads from the 318 heads and the 360 heads, the X head is a special thing. You're not going to find any of those because that's for the 6-pack deal. But the J heads, you're going to find lots of those, and most of them that you find are going to be the small valve versions. But all of those heads, all of those port sizes are about the same. They all kind of, I've talked to Dulcich about that. He said, there's no magic head out there that you want to put in. Said the Magnums are going to be better, but on the LA side, there's not a lot of great stuff. You just put a J head on it, put a big valve in it, do some porting, and obviously he's very good at it, so he can kind of make them work. What's the consensus on that Edelbrock Super Cobra Jet head? I just love saying that. I've never run the Edelbrock version of that head. I've run the Ford Racing Super Cobra Jet head that Kazi did, and I've done the Cobra Jet head, and then we've done some of the other Kazi heads too. And he knows what he's doing, does a pretty good job. The casting on the 360, I think, was a 974. See, we still do that with aircraft plugs. Sandblast, read gap, and test. There you go. Patrick's in the house. Yeah, Ed, you could configure it in some way to work. Obviously, Dodge did that with the Hemi or with the Demon, but it's just a lot of work, and nobody's going to do it. I know, Greg, that's one intake I would definitely like to run. And if I put together, well, I am going to put together a 440 base motor, I would love to run one of those. And the prices on those things are just ridiculous. I'm hoping to run across somebody that has one that would let me use it. I just want to try it. If nothing else, I'm going to build something that duplicates that. And that they made 2 versions of that. They made a shorter version and a longer version. One of them had kind of Siamese runners on it, which is really neat. Yeah, Timmy, you can pump your AC refrigerant into there. And if you take a look at there's some papers out on the Demon that Dodge did, and that's what they're doing. 74 beeper. Yeah, the Trick Flow small block Mopar head is good because it allows you to use LA intake manifolds, which there are more of on the Magnum. Nick, I haven't done any AMC. I'd like to do a 401 or a 390. I like both of those. We had the 390 powered Javelin in at West Tech, which I did a short video on the other day, and they're really cool. Yeah, Tim, that should be a good combination. If it flows what an 862 head does, that's pretty good. Splayed and compound valve angles. Wow. Getting all big block on us. And VVT, nice. A Ford 6.2 Boss build for the other guys. That's pretty low on the list. It would be cool. I'm excited about the 7.3 though. I might get to do. Uh-oh, Patrick, the the 351 Windsor Turbo held up, but the 9-inch didn't. Wow, I'm surprised. The 9 inches are usually pretty tough. Pontiac Super Duty 455 would be awesome, or a Super Duty 421, or a Super Duty 389. All those are good. Just got an AMX. I really like those. I like those even more than I like the Javelins. Yeah, everyone listen to Fred. He's hitting the like button. Patrick, the 225 had the head redone, so it's ready to test. Madman, if you look at the flow rates, those heads will be comparable. So I think it's going to be an interesting comparison between the Vortex stuff and the Magnum motors. I think that the Ford is going to be losing out on that. I purchased a set of A-Team Vortex type aluminum heads. Well, let me know how they work. I'm not familiar with that seller. Yeah, Tim, that's always the problem is the recovery rate. That's how it is for all of us. Ooh, a 71 to 74 Gremlin. Make sure you have the traction bars on it, though. Yeah, John, the guys at Roush can do some good things with the Boss. I haven't done Gen 2 Hemi stuff. I haven't ever even put one together. Westech has a couple of them there. Freiberger has one, and the owner of Westech has one with a blower on it that they ran. But I've never even they've told me how much all the stuff weighs, and it's it's a lot. I can't believe the rotating assembly on that, how big it is. Does Promax? Oh, a small block Chevy 360. Okay, what do you think about Promax heads? They work good. I've tried all of the ones that I've tried. I've been real happy with. Would like to see what a Little Red spec engine actually makes. Me too. I would want to see that. I want to see that B58 or D58, whatever it is. That's it. That's a good vacation, swapping the bed on your truck. I run a variety of different springs. We've run the 26918 Comp Beehive springs. BTR makes really good stuff. The guys at Comp have good dual springs. The guys at Cam Motion, Steve over there has really good stuff. Texas Speed has good stuff. Pack has a lot of stuff. Matt over at Sloppy has a particular pack, and I don't know what the part number is, but he has his go-to stuff. I run a bunch of different ones. I need a Nelson Racing engine twin turbo Hemi. Yeah. Battle of the Titans screwed over the 5.9 with the LA head in that battle. I didn't see that. Was that one of the comparisons that they did for Engine Masters or something? Grand National Cyclone Typhoon head on a non-boosted 6-cylinder. I don't know that that head is any better. Do you have a video of an LS7 build? Yeah, there's lots of LS7 stuff up. Are you going to get crazy with the do-it-yourself intake manifold for the 225? Yeah, I do. And I'd like to test that distribution. The problem is if I put a header on it, that may throw off the distribution. Maybe the stock exhaust manifold helps the distribution of the stock manifold. I wouldn't think, and given how long all of those motors last, the 225, that slant 6, the one thing that they say about those is they don't make a ton of power, but they seem to last forever. So I would think, and especially, and they also run very low RPM, which helps for longevity. But I would think that they would have done their homework on the distribution of that manifold. I think when guys start trying to boost it and stuff, that it gets problematic. But I think from the factory, they probably are pretty good, but I've never seen anybody actually test that. Yeah, Pack makes springs for Pack and Associated are the guys that make most of the springs for everybody. Aaron, what's up? Oh, for the nice Aaron. Okay, guys, I want you guys all to take note. Aaron Barnes has officially started the GoFundMe page for Richard to get a Nelson Racing twin turbo. Apparently he's wanting me to get a twin turbo Hemi, but I think he would be okay with an LS or anything else, or a big block or any of those. So right now it stands at $5. So if we could double that each day, I would be able to get one of those like never. Do you think that the Power Stroke intercooler? Thanks, Aaron. Do you think the Power Stroke intercooler is good for 700 horsepower 5.3? Yes. And I don't remember what the years are. We used to get those way back because they had plastic tanks on them, if I remember right. But you can look them up. We used to get them from the Ford dealership, if I remember right. But you definitely could get them from the wrecking yard too. What do you think of the crazy stamp rockers? Yeah, that's not great. Did the US get the 6-cylinder? We did not get the Hemi 6-cylinder. Ira, I appreciate all the information that you do not have to share. I have to though. It's just it like wants to come out of me. It's always a pleasure to watch and learn. Thank you, Ira. Crush Factor, the NRE, the twin turbo Hemi fund is just like doubled or tripled. That's awesome. I'm gonna have to talk to Tom and tell him that we have an official fund. I'm gonna see if I can put it on layaway. So if I pay you $5 like a week in 7,000 years, then I don't know if I did my math right there. Then I could actually get one. So I'm gonna see if he'll get it to me, and then I just make payments over time, like at $5. That would be great. Uh-oh, Cash for Clunkers Part 2 is in the headlines tonight. What are they trying to get rid of now? I think that they don't realize that clunkers to all of us means something awesome. Head gasket shortages and cylinder head shortages. I've talked to quite a few people who've tried to get cylinder heads, and all of this stuff seems to be backordered. Have you ever considered doing a Ford 4.6 stroker build? Come on, John. You know who you're talking to. I've already done those. We've done 5-liter 4.6 2-valve strokers. Racing with paramotors. I don't know. I've never heard of their twin turbo inline 6. I don't keep up with a lot of the OEM stuff, but maybe I should. Dan, what is the effect of changing the rocker ratio on a stock cam? Does it move the torque curve? Take a look at the, lucky for you, somebody actually does dyno testing, and you can take a look at the stock rocker change that we did, the video that's up, and you can see what it does. The changing the rocker ratio actually didn't affect the torque curve down low that dramatically. I've never tried going from a, does it move the torque curve? Oh, on an L67 from a 1.5 to a 1.9. That may have an effect. But I don't think it's gonna shift the torque production down low though. Exactly, clunkers are treasure. One man's trash. Turning gas guzzlers for zero emissions cars. Yeah, that's a really good idea. Patrick, the biggest difference is how they're oiled. One of them is oiled through the push rod, and the other one is oiled through the rocker. That's the big difference between them. They obviously have different. You have to run different intake manifolds with both of them, and so how they bolt on and stuff is different. But that's the big thing, and that's why you can actually put the different heads on the different blocks, but you have to make sure that you get the oiling correct. That's why I thought that I was doing my part for the environment by driving the Civic VX. I mean, it would get 55 miles a gallon driving down to West Tech and back. So I was doing my part. I know that a Prius didn't get that kind of mileage driving on the freeway because they're doing the best that they can in town where they're using electricity, but actually out on the open road, they're not that great. Which is why I thought that I should have been given like, status for the carpool lane, because my car was as efficient as all those other ones. I remember going to the wrecking yard and grabbing a few of those motors, and we ran them, even though they had the special Cash for Clunker spray paint on them or whatever. But we took those motors and ran them and used them as cores and stuff. I get this comment all the time. Did you see the video of the guy that put LS heads on 351? Yes, we've seen that. Yeah, 6-liter car engines are very rare, Tim. I agree. I don't ever see any aluminum LS2 or LS2 based motors in the wrecking yard. We see these, and I don't ever even see any LS truck engines, the iron versions, like an LQ4 or an LQ9 or any of the variants. I see a lot of 4.8s and 5.3s, but none of the 6-liters, and certainly no aluminum 6-liters. I'll have to check that. I would want to do a gear drive just because. Oh, I see. I got lost. It got unhappy. I've gone over my limit. Hopefully, I'm back. I'd like to do a gear drive just because you want to hear the noise. Julius? Did you see that? I was actually one of the co-hosts for the Advanced Engine Technology Conference when Kazi introduced that video. And I remember how excited Billy Godbold was because Kazi kept calling him and telling him what he was doing. He didn't tell anybody else. And then he introduced that at the PRI show at the conference. And it was awesome to see what they were doing, to watch. And I had been telling people about these reflected waves, and people still to this day don't understand what that is. Lots of really, really smart people that I talk to don't understand what's happening. And Kazi's, if you guys haven't seen it, it's probably out on the internet. Take a look and do a search for John Kazi and do intake tests. Because what he did was to demonstrate reflected wave, they put a hole in the intake port and they made it out of plexiglass. So he would, while the thing was running on the dyno, they eventually built aluminum shields for their bodies and stuff. But while the thing's running on the dyno, he would stick his finger in the intake port. And while the thing was running, you can see the reflected waves because his fingers go like this, like vibrating. And it's bending it a lot. So there's a lot of pressure in there. And it's not boost or anything. These are these reflective waves that I keep talking about with intake runner length going up and back, traveling up and back. And you can see it happening. And you can see how fast it's happening. And you can also see, because he did a clear like plenum and stuff on this tunnel ram, you can see all of the craziness for all of the air and fuel that are going on there. You're like, how does any of that stuff even get to where it's going? But it's very, very cool. And he did an awesome job. It's one of the best videos I've seen on car guy stuff, and watching him do that and just be giddy as hell was the greatest thing ever. I have not tried to run the 6-liter with the Caddy supercharger again yet. The Duramax intercooler should work on a boosted 6-liter. You should definitely get cooling. Yeah, the mixture was just insane on that, Julius. I agree. To see all that happen, the only time I've ever seen anything else like that is one of the Bonneville guys came and brought his thing to West Tech, and he wanted to find out because he was running a lot of nitrous. So he did the same thing. He had a big cover because he has a big, like, closed air induction system that he uses. and then he ran the nitrous in that, and we could see, and he was running like a, I don't know, 400 or 500 shot on this thing. And it was just chaos inside there. It wasn't like nice streams going in like we all picture, like we all hope is happening. It's just like a swirling cyclone of chaos. And that's what was going on with this tunnel ram thing too. And you're like, how do you, it's lucky that we have dynos where we can make changes and see the power changes. Because if you were just looking at that, you're like, oh, that doesn't even run. A bug. Okay, okay, I got to get going, guys. Thank you for showing up. I will I will not be back on tomorrow, but I will be back on the next day. So thank you for showing up, and thank you, Aaron, for starting the official NRE GoFundMe twin turbo get Richard a cool turbo engine. That's super cool when guys do stuff like that. So I will see you guys day after tomorrow. Make sure to go watch that video. Everyone go watch and push the like button before you guys leave. Thanks, guys. Bug, he's trying to get me.